You're listening to the Jon Stuart Podcast. You're listening to the Jon Stuart Podcast. Here's your host, Jon Stuart. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found. Have a blessed day. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found. Have a blessed day.
What you just heard was a good friend of mine, Troy Victory. He did my intros and outros for this podcast, and he just passed away of cardiac arrest a couple of weeks ago now. And as I sit here putting off this recording, because I wanted to do this as a tribute to Troy, I told myself, well, it's better I get it over with, because maybe that'll bring me some closure. Troy was a good friend of mine at my church. He was our communications pastor, and I only knew Troy for about 2.5 years, but in those 2.5 years we became really close, and he was definitely one of my best friends. We shared a lot of conversations with each other, a lot of memories in the church, serving, and just all different things, and lots of conversations, lots of memories. I hope I can get some of those out today. When I first met Troy and I first started going to that church, I wasn't very much of an extrovert. I was still coming out of my shell, and I think Troy saw that, because it seemed like all the time he'd say, "Man, I've really seen you grown since you first started coming here. You really I've seen a lot of growth in you," and that meant a lot to me. It meant a lot. And that was one thing. He was always an encourager. He always had something. He always had the bright side in any situation. If you were having a bad day, he said, he'd always have something encouraging to tell you that would help you. Maybe a different point of view of a situation that you didn't see because you were so into it. A situation of maybe how the other person is feeling or whatever. He'd always have these funny, cheesy jokes that I always thought really were funny. And he was always, no matter what was going on with him, he was always there for you, to support you, excuse me, and to help you. Troy and I talked about a lot of things, and speaking of podcasts, he was going to launch his own podcast here soon. He was in the process of it, called Troy Talk. He had been in the radio business before, and so he knew a lot about how radio and audio works, and he was going to start a podcast. I was trying to get him to start a podcast here on Anchor, but I think he was going to go with something else. Troy just meant a lot to me. Another memory that I have that sticks out to me is one summer. I made a podcast about this, but nobody really knew who was in the car with me. Last summer I was in a car wreck, and Troy was in the passenger seat in that car wreck. And it was actually his car, and nobody really got hurt in that car wreck, and the Lord was definitely watching over us. But Troy couldn't open up his passenger door. It was sideswiped from the passenger side, and he couldn't open his passenger door. And in the moment, I don't know if it was really that hard or just the adrenaline rushing through me, and I just got out and grabbed the doorknob and grabbed the top of the door and yanked it open for him. And he was really appreciative of that. I didn't find it that hard. It was pretty easy to open, but to him, I was a hero. I opened up the door for him. I was thinking of another trip back. We had just finished a conference, and for some reason everybody left Troy. He was always seemed like the last person to leave wherever we were, but I was still there, and this was maybe an hour drive home. And so I said, "Okay, Troy, I'll take you home." So we drove home, and I don't really remember the conversation we had, but just that quality time was very nice to have with Troy. And just it was Troy meant a lot to me. And if there was something going on and I needed to talk to somebody and everybody else was unavailable, I could send Troy a message and we'd talk about it. And he was always very supportive of me. He thought of me as like another son, and I just felt his love and his caring and compassion. And he was like that with everybody. You could ask anybody that he knew. He never knew a stranger. He would sit there and talk to somebody in the Walmart parking lot for an hour, and he'd always talk about his faith and about Jesus. He wasn't afraid of that. He was always an outside of the box kind of person. You'd ask him to do something that, might be hard for most people. He'd be okay. He may not know how to do it, but he'd definitely try. He was always a willing person. And if you ever needed anything, he'd be there for you, no matter what. And I just remembering of all the moments we shared, reminiscing, and I asked him to do these podcast intros and outros, and you notice there was 2 outros there, and I'll tell you the story about that one. So I sent him the script, and the last line on outro was "Have a blessed day." You know how you normally spell that, BLESSED. Well, I just sent it to him over text, and he came back with the first draft, and it was "Have a blessed day, blessed day." And I'd never heard it that way. Guess it makes sense. But I called him one morning and said, "Hey, love the intros and outros, but could you say blessed day instead of blessed?" And he said, "Sure, I didn't know how you wanted it. That's how, whoever normally says it and how it's been said, in the past." And I said, "Well, I'd never heard it that way. I wanted to say blessed." So he said, "Okay." And he got that draft back to me in the next couple of days, and that's what I use. But I wanted to include both of them today. And all these memories are just flooding through my mind right now, and it's hard to even put into words. Because sometimes I don't even remember what we talked about. It was just the fact that he spent time out of his day. Sometimes we'd stay up till 1 a.m. talking, and it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him to stay up till 3 a.m. talking to somebody. And it's hard to put into words all the different memories of Troy Victory and me. But he will definitely be missed. There's not a day I go by here recently without thinking about him. I think it'll be a long time before a day goes by that I don't think about him. I know he's in a better place now. He's with Jesus. Happier than ever. He was happy down on earth, but he's happier than ever now. I will see him again one day. I miss you, Troy.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.